Hello and welcome to video number 3 of this channel. This comes hot on the trail of video number 2 that I recorded earlier, and video number 2 covered this dashboard that we have on screen at the moment. As part of that video I mentioned that I would cover the UI elements that are on this left hand control panel here and cover that in this video. So what's unique about these UI elements are that when you select on them, you open up your pane here, your menu pane. But on selecting a different icon, it would close down the original menu pane and open up a new one. That isn't something that we've seen be possible in Tableau until some of the latest features have been released, or the latest versions have been released. And this works particularly well. You can click in any sort of combination, open, close, either one, however you want to use it. And the idea behind this is that I was looking to try and recreate some of the standard of UI or user experience that we are used to in our everyday lives. So in our everyday lives we constantly use web applications, apps on our phone, websites, whatever. All of them are built in this sort of way. Previously with Tableau we had abilities to open up these panels, but it was a little bit clunky. So I'm going to hopefully show you how to build what we've just shown you here and just talk through some of the limitations of what we've had previous. So why you might want to go the extra steps to create some of this stuff. So let's move into a workbook that I have prepared, which is this one. So we'll start off with, about a year ago, we had the feature called Show Hide Containers. They allowed us to apply a button to any object or any object or container on your dashboard, and that button controlled whether or not that object was shown or hidden. The problem with those Show Hide Container buttons was that they only control that one object. So I've replicated that side panel here, and I've built buttons using Show Hide Containers. So if I were to open or show the container, the menu container, it opens absolutely fine. And I can close it, there's no issue there. I can open up the next one and that works absolutely fine. But if I want to move directly without closing this to the previous menu, I would expect this to disappear. But it doesn't, and they start to overlay. This was a clunky sort of element of the Show Hide Container feature that you just had to get used to, understand how you could try and work around it, if you could. But opening up things that layer on top of each other became problematic when trying to build, because Tableau confused itself over to which panel you were trying to put something in. And also in the actual usability of it, things start to get hidden behind other panels. So you end up having to close one down before you can open up the next. It's not ideal from a UI perspective. So recently, in something like Tableau version 2022.3, they released the new feature, the dynamic zone visibility. And what that did was, where you could select an object or a worksheet on your dashboard, you could assign that to either a parameter or a calculation, and that parameter or calculation determined whether or not that object was shown or hidden. And the benefit of this is, because it's linked to a parameter or a calculation, you can control multiple objects from the one parameter or calculation on your dashboard. So you can control multiple zones. So what I'll do is I will talk through next sort of how zone visibility works and show you how you can utilize it to recreate this part of the Show Hide Containers. So in this next dashboard, I have created these two buttons using worksheets. They're highlighted in, they've got the background of yellow just to show some of the limitations behind using a worksheet, and in this case a shape mark. So with the shape mark you can see you get the highlighting when you hover on it, So that shows that you're about to select that object or that shape. And then you can click it once and you open up your you open up your panel. But the problem you have with using a shape mark is once you've clicked it, Tableau defaults this black border around your shape. It is horrible to look at, it's annoying, and you cannot turn it off. Even using little tricks like false highlighting, where you would click a mark and it wouldn't normally highlight, that doesn't seem to clear this. So we've clicked it once and we've got this highlight, opened up our panel, and we've got this highlighting effect around it. To close down the panel now, we don't just click another second time to close it down. You have to click one, get rid of the highlight, before then you can click a third time to close it, but then you get a highlight again, and then you have to click a fourth time to get rid of that highlight. So it's not just an action like we had on the show hide containers, which is open and close. We've now, using shape marks, we've actually gone back a step and we've gone 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks to return to the original state. So it would immediately sort of be obvious that yes, we can control the panel using zone visibility, using a worksheet and a shape mark, but we've lost some of that the user experience around just clicking that button once. But we can get past that, as you've seen from that final dashboard that I showed at the start. So let's just quickly run through zone visibility or dynamic zone visibility. If I click on this icon here, this button will open up my panel. If I select that vertical container that contains this text, as these other buttons, you'll see on the left hand side under layout we have got this feature here now. This is new in the last couple of versions of Tableau, and what we've done is we've said for this container, let's control the visibility using a value, so tick, and then we've chosen from our parameters a parameter that says dashboards open, because this is a panel that controls which dashboard you would use. So we are basically saying that this container is controlled by this parameter. The parameter determines whether it's shown or hidden. Now the setup of the parameter has to be a Boolean field, and the same with any calculations that we might want to use. They also must be Boolean, so it must be a true or false situation. For zone visibility to work, for you to be able to show your container, the result of your parameter or calculation needs to be true. If that parameter was to be changed to false, then our container would hide away. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst us will have noticed that every time I hover on this icon, I've got a tooltip that says false. This is a calculation that's on the worksheet that is preloading the next value for this parameter. So what I'm doing is I am clicking on the icon or clicking on the shape mark. I'm using a dashboard action, this one here. This action here is for the other icon. So my dashboard action is taking that value of false, and if I open it up to show you exactly what it's doing, ignore this missing stuff, it's just the other icons on here. But what it's doing is every time I click on this icon, I'm targeting this parameter and I'm sending over this calculation result, which is what we're seeing on the tooltip, false. So with a dashboard action, I click, I send false to that parameter, and then it closes down the panel. If I click it, if I hover on and get in, you'll see that now my preloaded next value would be true. So the calculation is adapting to what was in the parameter. And then if I then go through and select it again, remember it's about 4 clicks each time to get this thing to work. If I then send that via the parameter action to the parameter, it switches to false, but the true opens up the panel. So if we have a look on here to see what have I done on this worksheet, I don't need that, that's a legacy thing from something else. Ignore this calculation on the detail. That's for, I'm using similar icons or similar similar worksheets on the Fire dashboard. I don't actually need that in this instance. The only thing that we're ever interested in is this dashboard's logic open calculation. So let's have a look at what that's doing. It's very simple. If my dashboard's open parameter says true, then give me false. So if the status of that dashboard open parameter is currently true, which means that the panel is open, preload false, ready for the next click to then send to the parameter to close it down, to close that panel down. If, however, my parameter is false, then preload value true to get ready to open it up on its next click. Very straightforward. And just to prove the parameters here, they are set as Boolean. You can see the calculations are Boolean and the current value is just set to what it is in its current state. So that's how I work these individually. I could send via a parameter action the result of that true or false calculation, which is looking at that original parameter to say, what is its value? Let's load the next value out of the true or false. That parameter action picks that up, sends it to the parameter, updates it, and then it opens or closes this panel. Okay, relatively straightforward. However, this is all very clunky. So how have I got past this 1, 2, 3, 4 clicking? And how have I made it so that if I open up one, then I can close down the other? How have I done that? Still clicking away here. So let's have a look. The final dashboard. So the final solution, I can open up one click, I can close it down, 2 clicks. I can open up one click, I can open up a different one click, close it down, 2 clicks. Nice and easy and quite straightforward in terms of logic, but it does get a little bit more complicated in terms of the number of actions we have. So what is happening? There's a couple of things happening here. First of all, how am I getting rid of this 4 click, the need to click 4 times and the highlighting around this icon? Because if you notice, when I click it, the highlighting is gone. Click it again, the highlighting goes. How is that happening? Let's have a look in our little item hierarchy here. If I find my icon, let's move me out of the way. So we can see that I'm currently clicked on an icon worksheet that says dashboard's closed. It's within a horizontal container, and there's a second icon worksheet that is not in view. Essentially, if you're used to a concept of sheet swapping, you used to use it with parameters. Essentially, that's what I'm doing here within this horizontal container, but I'm using zone visibility to do the sheet swapping rather than a parameter on the filter pane. Now, why am I doing that? And what's the difference between these icons? I've got one icon that is, one icon worksheet here. Let's move this, let's move me up here. Got one icon worksheet that I've selected that's currently in view. It is being controlled by the dashboard's closed parameter. So the value at the moment for this object must be true. This has nothing to do with the panel that's opening up at the moment. This is just purely for this icon. Is it in view? Yes, it is. So this must be true. It's got a background color of this dark background. But when I click on this icon now that's in view, so the dashboard's closed, is no longer selectable. It's not there. It's out of view. Whereas the one that's now in view is looking at a different parameter. That's now this parameter must be saying open. It's true. It's got a different color background and the icon's color is different. So what's happened here is on clicking, my original dark background icon, that was this icon here, that originally was saying true, on clicking it has sent false to this parameter, which then closes that icon down, so we no longer see the dark background icon. But on the same click, I'm sending the value of true to this parameter to bring this icon in. And it's the switching between those two icon worksheets that is getting rid of that highlighting action, or that default highlighting around the shape. So the control of this panel is being operated through both these two icons that are sharing this container space. So this is where, when we move into this icon, we now have two sets of logic here. We've got the one that we already looked at on the previous shape mark limitation, which is this one, just to remind you. It says when dashboard parameter is parameter for the dashboard open is true, then send false, otherwise true. And then we've got one that here looks at a different parameter, and this different parameter does exactly the same logic. If it says true, then give us false. If it says false, then give us true. So they're doing exactly the same logic, but they're working in opposite. So while one of the parameters is set to true, the other one is set to false, and that just comes from the original setup. So if I look at these two parameters, the closed one is currently saying false, and the open one should currently be saying true. So what am I doing to update these two parameters is I need to have some actions set up. Now this is going to look a little bit messy, and the reason it's going to, well, a little bit more complicated is because I have a set of buttons here that need some actions, a set of buttons here that need some actions. I've got this button here that needs some actions, and I've got this button here that needs some actions. So the ones that we're looking for in this particular situation are these ones here that I've just pulled out. So last time, when we looked at the shape mark limitation sheet, where we were clicking 4 times and it was just opening and it was just closing, it was all working off of the dashboard open parameter action. And that was a case of saying, when we select on the button, target the open parameter and give the open logic. So it was preloading the next value depending on that parameter, depending on this open parameter, and we were sending it to it. And we were controlling not the icon but the actual panel itself. Well, here we are actually doing two things now. We're controlling the icons and we are controlling the panel, the pane itself, with that parameter. So this parameter now is controlling not just the pane like it was on the previous dashboard, it's controlling this icon at the same time. You can see they're both, so we've got the one parameter controlling 2 objects on our dashboard. So when we click this parameter and we send false to it, it not only closes down this panel, but it also closes down the icon we've just clicked. But then we've got a second action that's running when we click that icon, not just one action. And the second action, that was the first action, that is opening and closing this parameter. The second action that runs is this dashboard close one, which it says, okay, target the dashboard close parameter and give it the value of the other calculation that was on the detail shelf. So where this calculation, if we're looking at this at the moment, it's currently, the parameter currently in the true position because we're seeing both of these things for the open logic. So the open logic calculation is preloading false. So the next time we click that icon, the previous action was sending false to the open parameter, where in this case, this logic for this calculation is doing the opposite thing. It's saying that the current position for the closed parameter is false because we can't see that icon. So let's send true to that parameter. So now on that one click we are sending false. So the next action for both parameters for this situation is one click, we send false to the dashboard's open parameter that will close this panel and close this yellow icon. But on the same click we are sending true to the dashboard's closed parameter, which will open up, let's do this, which will open up this dashboard closed icon, the dark background one that is being controlled by that parameter that is the closed situation. So we've just turned this one to true. So this is how we are now switching on clicking, opening and closing the panel, but we're switching our icon, so our icon look changes because we're going from one that had a dark background and one to having a yellow background. That switch of the two worksheets stops us clicking 4 times, stops that default highlighting. So we're getting a bit more of the interactivity that we want. But then we need to layer on, how do we now close down the next, or this panel, or the panel from this object on a single click. So we need some more parameter actions. There's no more calculations involved. There's nothing too difficult in terms of calculations. It is just a true false logic. So let's say that we're in this situation here. We've opened up our filters and control panel, which is the controls, the ones that say controls on here. We now want to click on this dashboard button to open up our list of our menu for which dashboards can we navigate to in our workbook. When we click on this, we've already noticed that we're using our open and close to open the panel and open and close the different icons. We've now got 2 more parameter actions being run off of clicking this icon. The first one says dashboards are greater than control. So this is me saying that when I click this, I want this object to override this object, essentially. So let's have a look. What am I doing in terms of the parameter action? So this is running from the dashboard closed icon, because that's always going to be the dashboard closed icon is the one with the dark background. So it'll only ever run from this when this icon's in the view. When the icon is the dashboard open icon's in the view, that's when I've got the yellow icon. That means that I've already got the panel open and I don't need to override the filters one. So it only runs from this object or this worksheet. But what we're doing is we're targeting not the dashboard parameters any longer. We're targeting the parameter that controls this panel. So we've got a parameter controls open, which if I close this down, my controls open controls this panel and it controls this yellow icon. So sorry for the back and forward on this, but we're getting there. He says we're getting there, but I can't draw it up. There we go. So we're saying with this action here, dashboards are greater than control. If I edit that, we're going to target the parameter that's opening both of these two. Then we're going to send to it the value that we have that will be preloading false, which is, in this case, this logic here. So this calculation has false preloaded into it. We click it. It will send false to the parameter that controls these two to be open, which will automatically close them down. And when we do that, we're closing down this icon and closing down this panel. But we need to, because currently in this container for this filters control section, the dark background version of this icon is currently set to false. If we close down this icon, then we'll be left with no icons or no buttons left in this container. So we need to somehow reset the dark background to come back in, which is why we need this fourth parameter action. And this fourth parameter action is going to reset the icon with the dark background that's hidden away at the moment on clicking from this dashboard button. So again, it'll be the dashboard close button because it's always going to be the dark background one that we want to bring into view. It's going to target the other version of the controls parameter, the closed version. These are working on the open. The dark background one works on the closed. And this time we're going to send the opposite logic to it. We're going to send true to that parameter to bring the dark background button into view. So what we're doing here now is for this button we have 1, 2, 3, 4 parameter actions applied to it. 1 to bring open the panel, 2 to switch the icon, 3 to close down the filters and controls if it's in view, and 4 to bring back the icon from the filters and controls so it resets it to the dark background. We then have 4 parameter actions for the filters and control button. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and they do exactly the same thing just on this icon here, and again there's 2 in that container. We then have a couple of icons, a couple of actions here for each of these buttons that appear up here to do the same thing around the stopping the default highlighting appearing. So if I were to click this button here, then I don't get the default highlighting over that icon and it changes colour. And it's just how I've just created these buttons so they work like this. So with all that in mind, what we're left with is this situation where we can one click open up a panel, we can open up another panel and have it appear as we would expect it to, as we're used to more sophisticated web design and apps. Close either of them down nice and easily, rather than having our shape mark default highlighting going on where we click once, twice, 3 times, 4 times to get rid of it, where things will still overlay, or use the show hide containers where they overlay. Now this is still acceptable. It's probably your most succinct solution to all of this, because there's no actions involved, there's no calculations involved, you're not putting multiple sheets on. But if your business, if your customer, if your stakeholder really values something, let's see, this is where I shouldn't have been playing around. And now I've broken it. If your customer values something that will work as you would expect it to, and this is where I was just going back here because I was clicking on these ones. They're using the same parameters as what I was showcasing on the other dashboard. So I'm just going to step back. Here we go. So if your stakeholders are used to interactivity like this and they want something that feels a bit more modern, then this is kind of the solution that you can apply. It's not difficult in terms of calculations, there's just a few parameter actions and zone visibility to get your head around. I don't know how long that took, but thank you for watching. that's my third video and the last video for today. Leave your feedback, subscribe if you're continuing to like this content and you're still learning. It's really helpful for me to see that people are still enjoying this, so I'll continue to make more of these videos. Thank you for watching again.